Russia did the unthinkable on that fateful dawn. They launched a massive armored assault from a captured Ukrainian base, aiming to shatter the front lines in one brutal push. But what they didn't know was that Ukraine had been waiting, with a perfect trap laid out and backed by cutting-edge American technology from the U.S. Navy Air Force. This is Navy Air Force, bringing you the stories of military might and strategic brilliance. Remember, this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All scenarios are simulated and based on publicly available information, not official reports. At precisely 5:45 a.m. on August 5, 2025, the ground in Pokrovsk, Donetsk Oblast, trembled under the weight of Russian aggression. Satellite imagery captured the moment: 80 T-90 tanks, 45 armored personnel carriers, and a swarm of 100 Lancet kamikaze drones surging forward from a base seized back in 2023. Over 1,000 Russian infantry soldiers followed, shrouded in pre-dawn haze. This was a full-scale blitzkrieg to overrun defenses and seize Pokrovsk's logistics hub, a contested hotspot since the conflict's start. The Russian force was formidable. Each T-90 tank had reactive armor and 125mm guns, piercing from 2 kilometers. Armored carriers carried anti-tank missiles, while Lancet drones hunted resistance, detonating on impact. Moscow bet big to shift Donetsk's balance. Ukraine was ready. The 93rd Brigade rigged 5 square miles of farmland with 4,500 sensor mines hidden under soil. Amplified by U.S. satellite intel and NATO drones, the trap used bait corridors to lure enemies. It nearly failed when a Ukrainian truck neared the edge in fog, but a U.S. AI drone alert stopped it. Russians charged blindly, force committed. Explosions loomed, turning superiority against them. Ukraine's patience clashed with Russia's might. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below! As the Russian column advanced into what they believed was an exposed Ukrainian flank, they had no idea they were driving straight into a meticulously crafted death trap. The date was August 5, 2025, and the location was the contested terrain around Pokrovsk in Donetsk Oblast, a key logistics node where control could tip the scales in the prolonged war. Russian commanders, buoyed by their superior numbers and firepower, pushed forward with confidence, but their forces' inherent sluggishness would soon prove fatal. The 80 T-90 tanks lumbered at 35 miles per hour, their heavy tracks churning the soil, while the 45 armored personnel carriers trailed behind, loaded with troops and munitions. Above them, the 100 Lancet drones circled like vultures, ready to dive on any detected threats. Russia's strategy relied on brute force: overwhelm with volume, saturate the area with drones to clear paths, and use infantry to mop up. But this approach made them predictable and slow to adapt. Their communications were vulnerable, and their columns extended too far without adequate reconnaissance, a classic flaw in mechanized assaults against agile defenders. The total cost of this push exceeded $500 million in equipment alone, a high-stakes gamble to break Ukraine's resolve before winter set in. Ukraine, however, had turned the landscape into a weapon. Under the command of General Alexander Pavliuk, the 93rd Mechanized Brigade had spent weeks preparing. They transformed a 5-square-mile stretch of farmland, dotted with rolling hills and scattered groves, into a mine-infested nightmare. 4,500 anti-tank mines, each equipped with pressure sensors and remote activation capabilities, were buried in staggered patterns. These weren't simple explosives. Many were smart mines, linked to a network that could be triggered selectively based on real-time data. The setup included anti-personnel variants to target dismounted troops, creating overlapping kill zones that would channel survivors into even deadlier areas. This preparation was no solo effort. U.S. Navy Air Force support played a pivotal role, providing high-resolution satellite imagery from Keyhole-class reconnaissance satellites and Global Hawk drones flying at 60,000 feet. These assets delivered precise mapping of Russian movements, allowing Ukraine to adjust mine placements dynamically. Electronic warfare specialists from NATO allies had also integrated jamming equipment, ready to disrupt Russian GPS and radio signals at the critical moment. The trap's brilliance lay in its subtlety. Ukraine left intentional gaps, narrow, seemingly safe passages through the fields, to bait the Russians into funneling their forces. It was a psychological ploy, exploiting the enemy's overconfidence. Spotters in concealed bunkers monitored via thermal cameras, feeding data to command centers miles away. But even the best plans teeter on the edge. Just before the assault, a Ukrainian logistics truck, laden with ammunition and racing to resupply forward positions, nearly veered into the minefield due to a navigation error in the dense fog. The driver, unaware, was seconds from disaster when a US AI-enhanced drone overhead detected the anomaly. An instant alert blared over encrypted comms. Abort route, minefield perimeter breached. The truck screeched to a halt, tires digging into the dirt mere feet from the first sensor. Hearts pounded in the command post as operators confirmed the near miss. Without that timely intervention, the entire field could have detonated prematurely, exposing the trap and dooming the defense. Now, with the Russians committed, Ukraine's clever strategy was about to unfold against Russia's ponderous might. The terrain concealed a lethal network, waiting for the spark to ignite chaos. As the first rays of dawn pierced the fog over Pokrovsk, the Russian advance pressed on, oblivious to the doom awaiting beneath their treads. The lead T-90 tanks, their engines growling like distant thunder, crossed into the deceptive safe corridors at 6:05 a.m. Ukrainian commanders, monitoring from a hidden command post 5 kilometers away, watched via live feeds from US Global Hawk drones circling at 60,000 feet. The intel was crystal clear. The Russians had taken the bait, their extended columns stretching over 2 kilometers, making them vulnerable to a single devastating blow. In that pivotal moment, the trap sprang to life. The first sensor mine detected the pressure of a 50-ton tank and detonated with a muffled boom that quickly escalated into a symphony of destruction. 25 T-90 tanks vanished in plumes of fire and dirt within the first 30 seconds, their turrets hurled skyward like discarded toys. The earth heaved violently, creating craters 10 meters wide and spewing shrapnel that shredded nearby armored personnel carriers. Screams echoed over open comms as Russian drivers swerved in panic, only to trigger more mines in the staggered layout. The chain reaction was relentless. 45 vehicles crippled or destroyed in under 2 minutes, their fuel tanks igniting in secondary explosions that lit the horizon like a fall sunrise. Chaos engulfed the Russian force. The surviving tanks ground to a halt, their commanders barking orders in confusion. But the overextension proved fatal. Russia's cumbersome might, so effective in open fields, faltered here. Their slow adaptation to the unexpected left gaps in formation. Infantry dismounted hastily, only to step on anti-personnel mines that mangled limbs and sowed terror. Above, the 100 Lancet drones, meant to provide air cover, began self-destructing erratically as US electronic warfare jamming from nearby Navy assets disrupted their guidance systems. 50 drones plummeted harmlessly, exploding on empty ground or colliding mid-air in a fireworks display of wasted technology. Ukraine's timing was impeccable, a testament to their strategic genius. While Russia's firepower overwhelmed in theory, their sluggish response, rooted in rigid command structures, allowed Ukrainian spotters to activate selective mines remotely, maximizing damage without wasting resources. A Russian radio transmission crackled through the interference. Mines everywhere. Pull back, but it was too late. The column was fractured, with isolated pockets of troops scrambling for cover amid the smoke and debris. Adding to the tension, US recon drones provided real-time intel that revealed a cluster of Russian command vehicles lagging behind, exposed. Ukrainian artillery spotters adjusted coordinates on the fly, but held fire. For now, the soil erupted in rage, exploiting Russia's sluggish momentum, turning their advance into a graveyard of twisted metal and broken dreams. The battle had just begun, but the tide was already turning. The smoke from the minefield explosions hadn't even begun to settle when Ukraine launched their counterstrike, transforming defense into devastating offense. At 6:10 a.m., the 12th Armored Assault Battalion surged from concealed positions 3 kilometers west of the kill zone. 45 T-84 Oplot tanks, Ukraine's homegrown main battle tanks equipped with Noj explosive reactive armor and 125mm guns, rolled out at 40 miles per hour. Supported by 18 HIMARS rocket systems, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, provided by the U.S. Team B's units, fired a barrage of precision-guided rockets, each carrying cluster munitions that rained down on the disorganized Russian rear. The ground shook anew as Ukrainian armor closed in, their commanders using real-time US satellite data to target weak points in the Russian line. But the real game-changer came from the skies. US Air Force F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters, operating from NATO bases in Poland, streaked in at low altitude. These jets, with their advanced AESA radars and air-to-air missiles locked onto the remaining 70 Lancet drones. In a blistering 2-minute engagement, 70 drones were shot down, their wreckage scattering like confetti across the fields. "Bandits down, sky clear," crackled a pilot's voice over Allied comms, a testament to American precision. Simultaneously, electronic warfare kicked in. From U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyers positioned in the Black Sea, powerful jamming signals flooded the battlefield. Russian communications dissolved into static, their commanders unable to coordinate retreats or call for reinforcements. This disruption amplified Russia's inherent sluggishness. Their heavy T-90 tanks, bogged down in mud and debris, couldn't maneuver quickly, while Ukraine's smarter, more agile flanks enveloped them. Ukrainian infantry, 1,000 strong, advanced in coordinated waves, using Javelin anti-tank missiles, another U.S. gift, to pick off stragglers. The clash was fierce, with losses mounting on both sides. Ukraine lost 25 vehicles to desperate Russian counterfire, including 8 T-84 tanks hit by lucky artillery shells, and 200 soldiers fell in the intense close-quarters fighting. Yet, Russia's toll was heavier. 60 vehicles obliterated, including 30 more tanks, and 400 soldiers killed or captured amid the pandemonium. A Russian officer's frantic plea echoed in intercepted transmissions. "We're surrounded, systems failing." But Ukraine's intelligence flipped the script, their smart flanking maneuvers exploiting every Russian delay. American innovation disrupted the chaos, turning what could have been a stalemate into a rout. The HIMARS volleys continued, pounding supply lines and forcing Russian survivors to abandon equipment. One particularly brutal exchange saw a Ukrainian tank crew ram through a breach, destroying a command post and capturing vital documents. The battle's intensity underscored the cost of war, blood on both sides, but Ukraine's wits, bolstered by US tech, were proving superior against Russia's raw, slow power. As the dust settled by 6:30 a.m., the front line had shifted, with Ukraine reclaiming ground and inflicting a psychological blow. The integration of American stealth and electronic dominance had not only saved lives, but redefined the engagement, reminding the world that technology and tactics trump sheer force. What do you think? Was this the turning point Ukraine needed? Share in the comments. With the Russian force in tatters from the minefield and initial counterstrikes, Ukraine moved to seal the victory through a masterful ambush. At 6:25 a.m., 850 Ukrainian infantry troops, divided into 8 specialized fire teams, emerged from pre-dug trenches and dense tree lines bordering the chaos. These elite units, inclusive of sharpshooters, anti-armor experts, and electronic warfare specialists, had lain in wait for hours, their positions masked by natural camouflage, and US-provided thermal blankets that defeated Russian infrared scans. The operation, code-named Iron Veil, aimed to encircle and neutralize survivors without mercy. As disoriented Russian infantry scattered from their burning vehicles, seeking cover in ditches and ruins, Ukraine's team struck with surgical precision. Dozens of RPG-29 launchers roared to life, slamming thermobaric warheads into clustered command trucks and personnel carriers. One massive hit ignited a Russian ammo depot, sending a fireball soaring 4 stories high and raining molten fragments over a 150-yard radius. Snipers with night vision scopes picked off officers barking retreat orders, dropping over 120 Russians in the first 5 minutes. The ambush's intelligence edge shone bright. U.S. satellites, including the advanced Lacrosse radar imaging system, tracked every movement in real time, relaying data to Ukrainian handheld devices. This allowed dynamic adjustments. When a group of 200 Russian soldiers fled eastward, Ukraine's flanking teams rerouted to intercept, cutting off escape routes via underground tunnels prepared weeks earlier. Gunfire erupted in close quarters, with Ukrainian squads using suppressed AK-74s for silent takedowns, minimizing alerts. In the heart of the melee, near a smoldering T-90 wreck, Ukrainian forces discovered a camouflaged command vehicle, transmitting frantic signals. Inside, amid maps and encrypted laptops, lay Colonel Dmitry Volkov, commander of the Russian 142nd Motorized Rifle Regiment, with a high-value target overseeing Donetsk operations. Wounded but alive, he attempted disguise as a conscript, but his officer's insignia and secure satellite phone betrayed him. Captured alive after a brief struggle, Volkov yielded data drives revealing Russian fallback positions and supply routes. an intelligence goldmine that could unravel weeks of enemy planning. Survivors didn't fare better. U.S. satellites spotted fleeing pockets, guiding a final HIMARS strike that obliterated 30 more vehicles and 100 soldiers. They scattered in disarray, but Ukraine's astute encirclement captured their core. The aftermath reshaped the battlefield. Ukraine reclaimed 2 square kilometers of front line, fortifying Pokrovsk and halting Russian momentum in Donetsk for months. Geopolitically, it bolstered NATO unity, prompting increased U.S. aid and deterring further Russian escalations, solidifying the alliance against aggression. Losses were heavy. Ukraine mourned 150 casualties, but the smart ambush proved decisive. The dawn battle at Pokrovsk on August 5, 2025, ended in Ukraine's resounding victory, but at great cost. Russia suffered catastrophic losses: 60 vehicles destroyed, 400 soldiers dead or captured. Ukraine paid dearly too, with 25 vehicles lost and 200 casualties. Yet, through smart tactics, minefield traps, precise timing, and astute ambushes, Ukraine outmaneuvered Russia's raw power, amplified by U.S. Navy Air Force tech like F-35 strikes and satellite intel. This clash shifted the Donetsk front line, strengthening NATO alliances and deterring Russian aggression. Raw power falters against tactical brilliance and unbreakable alliances. Remember, this is for entertainment and education only. What strategy would you deploy? Subscribe to Navy Air Force and comment below.